Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? My name is Tony Rosano, and you are now listening to another episode of the world famous, the University Love, the best podcast in one, two, three galaxies. Ladies and gentlemen, you and I, we just call this show Online Marketing Moves. We are coming to you live today. Today is May the 1st, 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an all new episode. Um, May is a great month, okay? Uh, you know, it's Mother's Day. It's my mom's birthday, my wife's birthday. It's my birthday. It's a great month. But today, ladies and gentlemen, we have something very important we're going to talk about. We have something um, very important that we are going to discuss. And here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to be the Atlanta Hawks. Now, why do I bring this up? Last night, ladies and gentlemen, the Atlanta Hawks, they were in an elimination game in the NBA playoffs, and the Atlanta Hawks got beat by at least 50 points. They laid down like dogs, okay? It was bad enough. Game 5, they lost by 29 points, and then to turn around and lose by 50. And it got me to thinking last night when I was driving. I thought to myself, why would anybody why would anybody go to an Atlanta Hawks game? And it could be the same And it could be the same with you and your business. Why should anybody listen to you? Why should anybody buy from you? Why should anybody, want to deal with you as far as business? And you do not want to be, ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to be the Atlanta Hawks. You do not want that. And what do I mean by that? The Atlanta Hawks, they're not a terrible franchise, but they're not a great franchise. They are just sort of blah. I've lived I'm from Georgia now. I've been here over 20 years now. And in my 20 years, we've had some most of the time you get an average Hawks team. They barely get above 500. They at first they was getting a fourth seed, fifth seed. They would get put out first round. Then they started to go toward, they would go to the second round, get blown out, lose. But it's never been like, oh man, I really know that the Hawks are gonna deliver today. No, it's never that. And one time the Hawks they won 60 games and they were the number one seed, and they still were not the favorite to go to the finals, and they got swept being the number one seed. So even in the great year, all you get is a trip to Eastern Conference Finals and a sweep. So it's never like, all the Hawks are gonna deliver. And I got to thinking last night, you know how people they say, sell me this pen, if you're a great salesman, sell me this pen. No, 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 no. Sell me on the idea of why should I go to an Atlanta Hawks game? Why would you at this point? Well, number one, if you live in Atlanta, you're from Atlanta, you go to the Hawks games to be seen, but why would you buy a ticket? Why? Why would you? Why should somebody listen to you? Why should somebody want to do a podcast with you? Why? They got me to thinking. The Hawks are in the middle. The middle is like death, okay, at this point in life. Um, you don't want to be, it's like, Stephen A. Smith is a broadcaster on ESPN. Stephen A. Smith says, "Oh, I'm not a conservative. I'm not a liberal." He said fiscally, I'm a conservative. And I'm a liberal. I want to know both sides of this coin. Blah 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 blah. you know, Stephen A is trying to be the Atlanta Hawks of politics. He's trying to be in the middle, in the middle. And the middle is going nowhere. The middle is like neutral. You're stuck in neutral. You ever been stuck in neutral? You ever got in the mud? You ever been stuck in the mud and the wheels are just spinning and you just sort of stuck? That's the Atlanta Hawks. You don't want to be the Atlanta Hawks. Whether you know, you have a podcast about relationships. You don't want to be, men are great. Men and women are great. You don't want to talk. You don't want to talk middle talk. Uh, middle talk is, a lot of because you do you know fair. You know how Fox News says fair and balanced, but they really not fair and balanced. You know that's basically what I'm getting at. The Atlanta Hawks are they're fair and balanced, but they stink. You're not gonna get nothing great, but you're not gonna get nothing terrible. You know what I mean? You're gonna get okay. Watching the Hawks, don't be the Hawks, don't be Applebee's. You ever been to Applebee's? Back in the day, Applebee's was pretty good. It wasn't bad at all. And then you start going to more restaurant. The more restaurants you start going to, the more restaurants you start eating at, you go, you know what? Applebee's just ain't it, man. Applebee's is okay. It's middle of the road. It ain't the greatest. It ain't the best. It ain't the worst. It's okay. But do you want to spend a bunch of money for just okay? No, you don't. You want to spend money on people you believe in. You want to spend money on people, things that you know that can work for you, that will give you an edge, give you a boost. And being in the middle is not is not going to do that. Okay. You want to be the number one show, or do you want to be? Because being nowadays being in the middle of the road show will get you canceled after 3 or 4 years. It's not like before they do 8 years. Some shows you like, oh, they did 8 years of that show, and it wasn't a hit, but it wasn't the worst show on TV. But they got in 7 or 8 years, and it's like cool. Now you have to, really get your show talked about. You don't want to be in the middle. Um, you don't want to be the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks, um, as I told you, I just kept thinking last night over and over. Why on earth would you buy a ticket? Why on earth would you, you know, wake up one day, drive to the stadium, sit in Atlanta traffic downtown to go to a Hawks game at this point, when you know the outcome, you know the result. It's gonna be it could be an all right performance, or it could be a bad performance, but it's gonna be nothing. There's not gonna be any kind of benefit. There's not gonna be any great outcome. You're not gonna be like, oh, this was the season we won the championship. The complete opposite of that. We have one sports team around here that is consistent, and this is who you want to be. You want to be the Atlanta Braves, okay? The Braves in the last, let's say, since 1991, the first time they went to the World Series. In 35 years, the Atlanta Braves, they've been to six World Series. They won two. And I know some people, they would say only two World Series in 35 years. Hey, listen, baseball, it's hard to win a championship in any sport. It's especially hard to win in baseball. So two World Series wins, six trips to the World Series. They every year they're in the top five NL teams, top 10 NL teams, or top five really, top 5 or 6 NL teams. They're always in contention. You're always like, well, maybe the Braves this year, maybe the Braves this year. But when you go to the game, when you follow the team, you're getting a high quality, um, experience. You're not going to be wasting your time like the Hawks. If you watch the Hawks every year over and over and over, you're getting the same thing. You're getting middle of the road. You're getting okay. You're getting average. That's it. It's why would sell me on going to a Hawks game? You can't sell me on going to a Braves game. I just told you, 35 years, six trips to the World Series, two two World Series trophies, six National League pennants. So they've been champion of the National League 6 times. Countless NLC trips. You know, they never really just barely make it. There's always like, oh, here's the Braves. Um, eh, so you're going on a ride, but you're getting a quality ride. At this point in life, when money, people really want to try to count their dollars and count their money. Why would you piss your money away on the Hawks? Why would you waste your money on a mediocre? Why would you waste your money on anything mediocre? Why would you waste your time on anything mediocre at this point in your life? So, ladies and gentlemen, we all got to improve. We all got to get off the middle of the road, the Stephen A. Smith politics, the Atlanta Hawks basketball playing. You got to get out the middle of the road. You got to go high. You know, um, I read this book by Dan Kennedy one time. He talked about, listen, you're not gonna be the lowest selling person. So shoot high. Get your prices up there. And you want to do that, and you want to make quality. You want to make quality. You want to make quality things. All right. You don't want to be middle of the road to get you nowhere. Middle of the road, it gets you stuck in neutral. Middle of the road, it gets you the Atlanta Hawks. Okay. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. We'll be back on Monday with an all new episode of Online Marketing Moves. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, you can always hit me up. If you want to be interviewed on this show, please feel free to email me, Tony at TonyRisano.com. But until Monday, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. God bless each and every one of you. And as always, everybody, peace. Except for you, Atlanta Hawks. Go practice. No peace. Go practice. Peace.